Well, welcome back, everybody, to Locked Off Logic podcast. We're really excited to welcome Steve Murphy on the podcast. You've heard us in the past talk about Narcos. Sam just finished season 1 and 2 of Narcos, and so we have the guy who inspired that show that was played by Boyd Holbrook, which is funny, Steve, because like usually when we have like guests on, we'll ask them, if you could have your story portrayed in media, who would you have portray you? But your story's already been portrayed, so I'm sure your answer would have been Boyd, right?
Absolutely. He did a whole lot better job than I could have ever done. I think he did a better job than I did in real life.
No,
Wow.
no, I don't know about that. No, that's one of my questions, Steve. Is I just we like to start off and just ask our host a question, get him comfortable, and so since you've already been portrayed in media, and obviously like Narcos is one of Netflix's most popular series. When they told you that Boyd was going to be playing you, like, did you look him up? Did you know who he was? Did you Google him? Like, when you met him, like, what was it like? Like, tell me about the experience of like, okay, well, Steve, you're going to be portrayed by Boyd Holbrook for the series Narcos.
So all of those things you just mentioned is what I did. Honestly, I'd never heard of Boyd, but checked him out. I Googled him and started looking at some of the things he'd been involved with on the IMDb, on the Internet Movie Database. Man, he'd been in a lot of different shows, a lot of different movies. Read up on him a little bit, and he was a former model. He's a hillbilly like me. He came from Eastern Kentucky. Had a great story, backstory about how he was discovered just in a little theater there in Eastern Kentucky. But talked to him on the phone, got introduced by the creator of Narcos, who is Eric Newman. And then a short time later is when we found out that Pedro Pascal was going to play Javier. And of course, if anybody's ever watched Game of Thrones, they know who Prince Obergon is, and that was Pedro. So what we did is we talked to DEA, we being Javier and I. And of course, we're going through Eric Newman, and he's negotiating with Gaumont International Television and Netflix. And DEA agreed to let us bring the actors in and embed them with the DEA Training Academy for a week.
Wow.
So we, on a Sunday, we got everything set up, talked to Pedro and Boyd. They flew into Dulles Airport. I was still living in Northern Virginia outside of D.C. back then. I picked everybody up at the airport on a Sunday evening, had everybody over at the house for dinner that night, and my daughters were there. And unbeknownst to me, they invited a bunch of their friends over. And I was thinking, this might not be a good thing because, Pedro was big time, and Boyd was coming up. And, you don't know these guys. And I didn't want to offend them right off the bat. And they were just as gracious as they could be, man. We had a great time that night. They answered all the kids' questions. Then on Monday, put them in a hotel. Monday, picked them up, and we took them to headquarters for a day. And they got briefings, and they did tours of the building. And, everybody that saw them stopped and wanted pictures, and they took the time, and they were very nice to everybody. And then Monday night, we all drove down to a hotel outside the DE Academy down in Quantico. Picked them up early Tuesday morning. They had to go for their first PT session at about 7 a.m. They were on the pistol range. They learned how to do all kinds of surveillance, static surveillance, moving surveillance, dynamic surveillance. They learned how to do raids. They even made them sit through a class for an hour. So they really participated in a lot of things there in 4 days. And at nighttime, we'd go back, the four of us, Javier and I, and Boyd and Pedro would go back to the hotel. And after dinner, it was nice weather, so we'd go outside and smoke a cigar and have a cold drink and just kind of shoot the breeze and get to know each other. And, unbeknownst to us, they were actually, I guess, learning our mannerisms and how we talk and how we act and things like that, and we thought we were checking them out. They're checking us out the whole time. But at the end of the week, I asked them, I said, what did you guys think about what you just went through this week? And they said, you know what, this is the best training we've ever got to do a film because we didn't know anything about DEA. We were going to portray you guys like New York City cops because that's what they knew, from living in New York. And DEA is completely different. It's just totally different. So, and apparently it paid off because those guys, in my opinion, and apparently in the opinion of the world, did a fantastic job. Fantastic.
Well, Steve, as you're talking, And I have just binged more or less season 1 and 2 of Narcos. As you're talking, my brain is going through all of the scenes of Boyd, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
he is nailing who is the person I'm talking to on this across the screen from right now, in mannerisms, in talking, in even the pacing and the flow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wow, that was really well done. And now hearing he spent all that time with you, and yeah, I mean, measuring you up.
Oh, it was. You know what? I mean, he's a hillbilly like I am, so yeah, the voice patterns I think might be a little natural. He's probably better looking than I ever was, so that was a plus. But we've stayed in touch over the years since Narcos came out. That's been, gosh, it's been what, 10 years now. And I had him on my podcast as a guest a couple years ago. He was writing a movie script one time, like an indie type movie, and it was about drug trafficking. And he called, and so we spent a lot of hours on the phone and conference calls. Just telling him how things would work if this was the situation. And I mean, just a personable guy, and his career has just really blown up, man. He's been in. I haven't checked him out lately, but I remember seeing him in Logan. He was the bad guy in Logan. There's another one he was in recently. And right now I'm blanking. I tell you, the older I get, the less I remember. It seems like, but I mean, his career is phenomenal. He's married now. He's got a little boy that's just as cute as he can be. It's been, you know, for me, I've since met a few Hollywood people, but I would have never met anybody like that in my life. And you always hear the bad, negative things about Hollywood stars. And I got to tell you, Pedro and Boyd, they don't live up to that personality, that persona. They are both gentlemen. They came and did after season 2 of Narcos came out. There's an organization, a nonprofit called the DEA Educational Foundation, and this foundation, they create after school programs for kids who are considered high risk kids that maybe only have one parent who works, and they come out of school and they've got nobody to look after them. So the foundation creates after school programs, and it could be dance, it could be baseball, it could be soccer. I think they did karate in a couple places. But anyway, we did a fundraiser in Pacific Palisades there outside of Hollywood, and both those guys came, and we had this some rich people were hosting it in their backyard, and had this huge 25-foot screen where they were showing the trailers, and I mean the guys just participated. Even the guy that played Escobar.
Ooh,
gosh.
Wagner Mora.
He was just in Civil War.
Wagner Mora. Yeah, even Wagner Mora was there. And I tell you what, he did a phenomenal job playing Escobar. And in real life, he is one of the nicest, most humble people you ever talk to. I mean, I think we were blessed to have those 3 guys working on the film. And then Joanna Christie played my wife, and she was fantastic. She came and spent. I was out of town on a speaking event, and she came and spent a few days with my wife at the house, and they'd go on long walks, and and just learning her personality as well. And the cool thing was when they were filming, my wife was a nurse, and so they showed Joanna in some nursing scenes in Narcos, and I think it's when somebody had swallowed some pellets of cocaine, and one of them had burst, and the person was dying.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So they gave Joanna Christie her script, and she read it. She called Connie right there from the scene. She's like, put everything on hold. She said, "Hey, this is the script. Here's the situation. This is what they're telling me to say. Is this correct?" And my wife's like, "That's not even close." So she gave her the terminology and how you would say it, so forth, and that's what you see in Narcos.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's been a real experience. It has. It's cool.
That is cool.
Steve,
well, and
how was your?
Oh, go ahead, Tyler.
No, go ahead, Sam. You finish your thought. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it could take it in a totally different direction, but I mean, I come from the filmmaking world, right? So, kind of a different world from where you and Tyler come from, and I understand a lot of times when you're taking a story, an idea from one to like reality of what actually happened to a script, and then a script to screen or a book to a screenplay. and how it has to be adapted and changed, and how much kind of starts to shift in the balance. And this could lead into a lot more, so I don't want to derail your question, Tyler. But I'm just curious, like, how accurate was kind of the depiction in Netflix's Narcos to the reality of what happened? And my guess is it actually feels fairly close. And here's why I say that: because I spotted you in a scene at the end of season 2 in a bar with Javier.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, if they're in this at the end, it's got to be a sign of approval that this is as close to the stories you can get on a platform like Netflix.
Well, I'll tell you what, the part about Javier not being in a bar a lot, that part's true. But
that's awesome.
we're into our 10th year of traveling around the world telling the true story about Pablo Escobar. So we have a keynote speaking business. We do conferences, corporate events, theaters, performing arts centers, colleges, universities, all that kind of stuff. And that's the most frequently question we get asked is how much is true.
I should have done my research a little more.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So we kind of did our own analysis because in our contracts it says that they can employ literary licensing as they see fit, and we have no say so. So about a third of what you see in the first 2 seasons is true. Those events happen, and they're depicted pretty much exactly the way they happen. The second third, well, those events happen, but they've been changed for, I don't know, dramatic purposes or for whatever reason. The events happen, but they're just not shown correctly. And then that last third is just straight out make-believe Hollywood. It shows Javier and I were running and gunning across the roofs of Medellin by ourselves with no police backup, shooting, killing people, getting shot at. None of that's true. Shows I was kidnapped at the end of season 1. I was never kidnapped. But there's an interesting story that goes along with that. If you go back and watch it, and you may not know this, Sam, but my 2 daughters are adopted. My wife and I adopted them while we lived in Colombia. So they're Colombian by birth. They're U.S. citizens now. And so when they were going to shoot that scene, we happened to be there in Bogota. And my daughters hadn't been back since they were babies, so they didn't remember anything about Bogota. So Connie and I went down with them. And Boyd came up to us and he said, "Hey, how would you like Monica and Mandy, that's my daughters, how would you like for them to be in a scene?" I said, "Sure." And, we asked the girls, and they said, they were teenagers. They were, let's see, that's 10 years. They were probably in their late teens. They might have been out of high school already. But they said, sure. So they went and dressed them up. And so what happens is, as Boyd's pulling into the driveway, he comes home from work. There's a sidewalk, and then the driveway kind of goes down into underground parking. And then we all lived in apartments down there. And so what he does is the cameraman is in the seat behind him in this big old-fashioned Bronco, the really big ones with the West Coast mirrors and all that. And so the camera's inside behind him, and he's filming between the seats to get Boyd's reaction. So Boyd knew if he did something, that they wouldn't be able to come out of the scene. He explained this all to me later. And so what happens is our daughters are extras. Everybody on the street's an extra. There's no just citizens walking around. And these 2 girls, our daughters come walking down the street, and he stops, and he does a big motion with his hand for them to come on and walk in front of him. And so they do. And then he goes to the garage door and then goes to open the door, and that's when he gets kidnapped. When he explained that by doing all that motion and everything and making a big deal out of it, they wouldn't cut that out. So they left it in. But here was the kickback on that was when Narcos finally came out, season 1, both daughters would come to me and go, "Hey, Dad, I'm in Narcos. Are you?" And I wasn't.
That's awesome.
Okay. Oh, that is funny. That is funny. So you're like, well, I will be in season 2.
Well, we didn't know that until they were filming season 2, and Eric called Javier and I and just said, "Hey, are you guys available like early next week?" And we said, "Sure." Well, what's going on? Because we didn't have any speaking events lined up. He said, "I need you down here in Bogota." That's all he would say. It's like, "Well, what do you need us to do?" "Well, I just need you down here." "Okay." So, they book your tickets and everything. We fly down and we check in our hotel, and he calls and he said, I think at 8:00, one of the Netflix vans is going to pick you up and they're going to bring you to wardrobe and makeup. They're going to do what? And he said, yeah, they're going to find some clothes for you because the day after tomorrow, you guys are going to be in the scene. So, we went and did that, and well, it was a nice surprise, I mean, we were on screen for like 2 seconds, so it wasn't really that big a deal, but.
Yeah. Well, and when you flashed on screen, I had seen a picture of you just because, but I also was like, oh, this has got to be the guys, because this is like, it's a random cut, but it's not a random cut.
Yeah.
And it's specifically after this event happened. It's just, you don't just show two random guys on a bar just going,
clinking glasses. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that's those two.
It felt like Stan Lee in the Marvel comics. He shows up every once in a while.
Oh, that's
it was
great.
good though. I mean, you enjoyed it. Not everybody picks up on that, but it's nice when somebody recognizes that.
For sure. Well, Tyler, go ahead with your question. I was just curious about that.
No, yeah, and see, if I'm not mistaken, there, like the scene where you shoot the guy's tire, like that has some truth in it. If I'm not, like, that wasn't the reason you shot the tire, because it was like you were pissed off in traffic, but like you actually had to like get away from someone that was tailing you. Am I remembering the story right or no?
Yeah, you're pretty close there. It's in the show. It shows that Connie and I are driving down the street trying to think of the name for the little girl that we're going to adopt. I think in the show they call her Olivia, and we're talking and not paying attention. I rear in a taxi cab and we get out and have an argument, and then they show Boyd pulls out his gun, shoots the guy's tire, and that didn't happen. But I was coming home from the embassy one night, and I had my suit on, and I'm driving the old big Bronco with the big West Coast mirrors, and it sits really high. And this guy in a Volkswagen in front of me, I guess he thought I was messing with him, because, I can't help it that the headlights set high on that thing and they're shining down, and I guess he thought it was blinding him. And so I didn't realize anything was going on until he finally moved over a lane. And then when I pulled up beside him, he's just blessing me out on the, calling me everything but an American. And so then he jerks and gets back in front of me, and I'm like, dude, what's your problem here? So eventually I get to where I can pass him and go on, and I'm within about 3 blocks of going home, but I don't want him to know where I live, because, we had a lot of enemies down there. And we were already working on the Escobar thing up in Medellin. So I went to a little side street close to the house, and I made a quick right and a quick left onto this little, like, adjacent street. Well, he goes up to the next block and turns out, and he comes down at me head on. So when we stop, he stops so that our bumpers are together, and my car has bulletproof glass and steel plates and all that stuff, and I can't even roll the windows down. The windows are about this thick, so you can't roll them down. And I've got a 9mm pistol in my hand because I don't know who this guy is, and sit there for several minutes, and I'm like, dude, I just want to go home. It's been a long day, and I mean, we were working 12-hour days back then. And so finally I opened my door and I leaned out and said, ¿Qué pasa? And when I did, he sprayed some kind of chemical at me, and it burned. I had my jacket off. It burned the crap out of my arm. So statute of limitations running out on this. He may have gotten a 9mm tune-up in his car right there. But he quickly left the scene, and I was able to go home, and that's what really happened.
So, I knew some kind of version of that story happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've told that story on any other show.
Huh.
Not the whole thing.
God,
that's a great story.
I remember reading something about that, or listening to you, like, in one of your talks or on one of your podcasts, and I was like, I wonder what the real, like, I knew it didn't happen. You ran the guy, but I remember you shot a car based on something that I'd heard. But no, I think Sam's question is awesome. Like, how much it really happened. I'm curious to know, like, even now, like, how has your life? Because you're in the DEA for 35 years. You retire. Netflix does a show about your story, essentially. How has your life changed since Narcos has come out?
Brother, I tell you what, I would never even have dreamt of what I'm doing now. I mean, not in the remotest part of my mind would I have ever thought that Javier and I would be doing what we're doing. Between the Narcos series, that blew up our speaking business. The 4 years before COVID, we averaged 75 appearances a year around the world. I saw him more than I saw my wife. COVID killed us. That we had an 80% reduction in business for 2 years, and now since COVID, we're doing maybe 20 to 25 shows a year. Just it comes in spurts, but I'm shocked all these years later, that people are still interested in hearing the story. But we've done probably over a dozen documentaries. Got an email just yesterday of a company in London wanting to do a new show on Pablo Escobar, and so we're represented by United Talent Agency, and they take care of that for us. The podcast has come along, and that was Morgan and I started our podcast almost 4 years ago. Game of Crimes. He had to leave last April. Excuse me. He still has a day job, so his work responsibilities increased, but so did his paycheck. So, I couldn't fault the guy for leaving the show.
Right.
But I've continued with it, and now it's Game of Crimes with Murph in the morning. It's doing phenomenally better than I ever thought it would. I honestly didn't think anybody would be interested in, especially the Escobar story, but I think the connection to Narcos, that's what everybody knows. Nobody, when Narcos first came out, Javier and I would get recognized every once in a while when you go places, and he still does, because I think there's a lot of wives' husbands that are looking for him down there, but I don't know. That's a joke.
That's awesome.
But
is it?
But occasionally, I think it's happened to me maybe once in the past year. So I think I prefer not being recognized, because then you get a lot of questions and things like that. But now the podcast though is through our mutual friend Tyler Blue, who in my book is just a little hero. She's helping me to blow things up on. I never thought I'd have a TikTok channel, and I got one now.
Oh yeah, it's killing it too.
She's killing that, and Instagram, she's gotten that up to over 150,000 views per post. And right now I had to cut her back a little bit because I got to pay for it, but we're posting 3 times a week, and she is just, I don't know how she does it. I had, for the show, we only had like 1,700, less than 1,800 followers on Instagram, and in just a few weeks she's bumped that up, I think 7,000 new followers, and it just continues to grow every time she puts a post out. So now, I was telling you before we started recording, I flew back from LA yesterday. I was out there with John Bernthal, and would have only met him. I met him at the Southern California Game Conference, which I support every year out in San Diego. And he came out there as a guest for just being a good guy, to meet people and sign autographs. And he autographed some stuff that they auctioned off and all that. I would have never met any of these people if it weren't for the Narcos things. So I just, I'm Christian. So there's an old saying that I love, a real simple saying. It says, "We plan, God laughs." I'm doing things that I'd never dreamed in a million years I would do. If a new opportunity presents itself, I'll pursue it. I'm real bad about shorting myself on time. That was when I was making cases. I would get overwhelmed because I would never say no to a new investigation, which really takes away from your family. But I just figure, if good Lord's going to present me an opportunity, I'll follow through with it and see what happens. And if not, they don't all work out. But I'm having a blast in retirement. I tell you what. Look at us. We met. I met you on the podcast, and holy cow, you're a repeat. There's only been a couple of people I've brought on the podcast twice, and I plan on bringing you back in another few months. That'll be your third.
Good. I got updates too, so I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Well, a follow-up to that, Steve, is right. And I don't want to pretend to know what the world is like in the DEA, especially what you experience and stuff. But safety obviously was a concern, I'm sure. No doubt when you were doing that. You were part of one of the biggest takedowns that we know about, in the narcotics world with Pablo Escobar. And then it got blown up on a TV show, and now you're getting seen everywhere else. Like, I mean, what are the safety concerns now? Potentially, like, does that also kind of? I don't know. I don't know. It seems like maybe that could be a little hairy.
Well, there's something different about what we did with the Escobar investigation. Typically, you go for the DEA's mission is to go for the biggest narcotics producers and traffickers in the world that have a negative impact on the United States. And, the United States is the largest consumer country in the world of illegal narcotics. It's not a reputation we're proud of, but it's the truth. Well, with the Medellin cartel, we not only took out Pablo, we took out the entire organization. Now, you would think that would happen with every investigation, but it doesn't. It was just because he was such a high priority. And we had, we weren't there of our own volition. It was the Colombian National Police invited us. And when he escaped from his prison that night, they called our boss and said, "Hey, we want Pena and Murphy in Medellin tomorrow to live here with us in this search block atmosphere," which was a police base, which is very similar to a U.S. military base here in our country. And that's what we did for 18 months. We lived there. It was dangerous during that time. But when Pablo was killed, the day he was killed, this is the guy that used to have as many as 500 sicarios protecting him. He was down to one guy. I mean, that's how much devastation we had caused on his organization. Some of the sicarios that were in prison with him did not escape. And one in particular, a guy that's referred to as Popeye. His real name is John Jairo Vasquez, I think is his real name. He passed away a few years ago, but when he came out of prison, he wrote a book. He got his own TV series. Heck, he was doing better than we were doing, because he's a bad guy. But
Right.
Javier and I, a lot of the interviews that we do and shows, people always say, "Well, how many people do you think Pablo is responsible for killing?" We used to say 10 to 15,000, maybe at the outside 20,000. And that's a huge number, right? But we did one documentary we filmed up in Vancouver, British Columbia. And as we're talking to the producers, they said, "Well, we're thinking about calling this guy Popeye." And we're like, no, he's a stone cold murderer. We don't want to be on the same show with him. Okay, we won't do it. And of course, when we left Vancouver, they called him.
Well, yeah, of course.
On film, he says that number that the gringos come up with, that 15,000, he said, they're so far off. The truth is Pablo's responsible for killing more than 50,000 people. 50,000 people.
My God.
I mean, I grew up in a town that was like 12,000 people, So then on that same show, Popeye admits to arranging as many as 3,000 murders himself. And of those, he committed 300 of them. He himself admits on camera that he killed 300 people. So anyway, that's kind of a long answer to a short question you asked me. We had taken out the entire organization except for those few guys. And now, as far as we know, they're all dead. When we travel around the world, we don't ask for security. Some places have it automatically. But a few years ago, our agent called and said, "Hey, you've got an offer to speak down in Mexico City." And we said, well, we thought about it. We said, well, we'll go, but we want a security detail that we pick, but you got, the producer, the host down there pays for. And they agreed to it. Well, when we were in Medellin, we worked with a lot of Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 guys, and we've stayed in touch with a lot of them. And plus, we had talked to the DEA office in Mexico City, and the boss down there was an old friend of ours. He said, "Man, don't worry about it. We'll have security pick you up at the airport. We'll have security at your hotel. We'll make sure you guys are okay." And so when they go through our speakers bureau agent, a company has to, I think they have to pay a 50% down deposit, a 50% down payment. I'm sorry. Or I guess it is a deposit. And they did. And just a few weeks into it, our agent called and says, "Hey, the host down in Mexico City just canceled you guys." Well, they don't even know us yet. How do we piss them off, He said,
Right.
they're already getting death threats on you guys. And this was going to be at the Mexico City Arena, which seats 15,000 people. So it wasn't worth, regardless of how much money it wasn't worth risking ourselves or the lives
Right.
of all the people that would come to see us. Because I wouldn't put it past those guys to bomb the place.
Right.
So anyway, other than that, my biggest danger is my wife, because she's a lot tougher than I ever was.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just imagine, like, wow, high profile case, obviously, and then now just the further publication of how it went down, what went down, what are the considerations after that. But that does make sense. How most, if not all, of that organization was taken down, which would be the ones to have a target still.
Well, I mean, as we moved around when I was still on the job, I might have checked out all my neighbors, and we were living in Northern Virginia the first time, out next to Dulles Airport, and a Colombian family actually moved in across the street, and I stayed away from them for a long time. I mean, we were running everything we could on them, and through all the databases we had access to, and turned out to be some of our best friends. They live in Austin, Texas now. They're still best friends. We did a show at the University of Texas in Austin, and I got them tickets to come in, and they sat right on the front row with us.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. And also, before Tyler about to say something, I'll say that also goes to attribute like the courage and bravery that you had and still have to still stand for what you stood for, and not bow down in the face of what terror or horror could happen just because, of who you are as a human being, which I commend you for.
I appreciate you saying that. The truth is, they didn't hire us because we were real smart. They're in Bogota going, okay, we need 2 guys to go to Medellin chase Pablo Escobar. Who are we going to get? I'll give it to Murphy and Pena. They'll go.
Well, thank goodness you 2 did.
Yeah.
Thank the good Lord. That's who we think.
Now, Steve, my question actually, Sam, he provided a good intro to that, because me and Sam, when we were talking about doing this podcast with you, and before we do like our official debrief on the podcast of Narcos season 1 and 2, like we were talking about, like, Wagner Moura and his portrayal of Pablo, and how he gives a really good performance, and you see him as like this human being at times, his father, this businessman, and then he has to like commit these acts of terror for you to kind of realize still that he's the villain in the story. And like from the speeches that I've heard you give, like specifically like when I was looking to just seek guidance and mentorship from you, of like you really give insight of just how evil he was. Like he murdered all these people, he blew up these airplanes, he trafficked all these girls. Like that's something that you and I have talked about for a long time, of just how he would traffic young girls as well. And so like Sam, mentioning like the bravery then and the bravery now, like what motivated you? Because like this guy, like this motherfucker, he's blowing up airplanes and he's trafficking young girls, and he's like the 7th richest man in the world. He's protected by 500 sicarios that are willing to kill for him. Like you had a bounty placed on your head. What gives you the strength, the courage, the balls, like whatever you want to call it, to not be like, here's my resignation. I'm going to fly back to Miami. I'm going to do something else, work at a gas station, open a car wash, do something else. This is not, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like what gives you the strength to look someone so evil and be like, no, I'm continuing to fight this fight day in and day out?
There's a few reasons that I attribute to why we did what we did and how we survived. And the first is, as a Christian, I believe God has a plan for all of us, and his plan just simply was not for us to die down there. I may fall over from a heart attack talking to you guys today. I don't know. I'm still exploring what his plan is. But so he gets all the credit and glory. You know me, Tyler. I'm not a tough guy. I never have been a tough guy. I might have played one on TV, but I'm really not. I do have the ability to focus on a mission and follow through. And when I was younger, I think God had given me the ability to go into a dangerous situation and not let fear overcome the way I was thinking about things. Because think about it. If somebody's shooting at you, your natural reaction is to run, right? I mean, and people ask me, was I scared down there? I was scared every time. Let somebody shoot at you. See if you don't get scared, right? But he had given me the ability to, I guess, think things through and not react impulsively. because if you let fear overcome you, you just lost your logical thinking abilities. And if you run, you've just given up cover and you're going to get shot in the back. You know, I heard just on TV this morning, I was watching the Today Show and they were interviewing these Medal of Honor winners. And again, apparently they're going to open a Medal of Honor museum here, but maybe later this week or next week. And one of the guys said somebody had told him one time, and these are guys that are studs, man. I mean, they're taking on multiple armed people and one-handedly saving their buddies, and it's just amazing. I get chill bumps. I'm getting chill bumps now just thinking about all these heroes and what they did. But one of the guys said, this other recipient had told him, he said, more people get shot in the back than they do facing the enemy. And that made perfect sense to me. I just kind of brought it all together of what I was kind of thinking in the back of my mind. Why did I not run away? Now, do I have that ability now? Probably not. I'd probably scream like a little girl, a little baby, and run down the street trying to outrun. All I got to do is outrun you guys, right? But so that's the big thing. The other is, we were much younger, much better shape than we are now. When you go overseas with DEA, you get some additional training, especially in firearms and weaponry and things like that. So that came in real handy. And then if you remember the story about Kiki Camarena, the DEA agent that was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered in Mexico, well, the Colombians saw the response of the United States when Mexico stopped cooperating on that investigation. And our president at the time shut the border down. Well, it took less than a day for Mexico to come back to the table and say, okay, we're back on board. Now, considering what happened there, why are drug dealers like Pablo Escobar and these kingpins, why are they in business? Make money, right? If you shut the border down, how much money are you making? None. Right. So they would be cutting off their nose to spite their face if they killed Javier and I. Yeah, he put a bounty on us. He threatened us. There was wiretap conversations, one where he mentioned the two gringos, and that was Javier and I. And then another one, this was real disconcerting. He actually mentioned the names Pena and Murphy. Now, that one caused me to step back just a second. Like, dude, he knows my name.
He knows your name. Shit. Yeah.
I'm thinking this ain't like that show Cheers where you want everybody to know your name. I didn't want him to know my name. But so I honestly believe that he knew what that reaction of the U.S. government would be. And that's probably went a long way. And then the last thing that I attributed this to is we worked with a very elite group of Colombian National Police officers. Their unit was called DIJIN. It's DIJIN is how you pronounce it. You may have encountered them, Tyler. So these guys were studs. These are the guys that are out. Intel's coming in, they're going out immediately. They're not waiting for the 600-man search block force to come together, the bloque de búsqueda. These guys are on the roll. And so we were working with them. And I'll be honest with you, when the shooting started, they would run. They'd stand there and fight. They were protecting Javier and I. But on the same token, they knew we wouldn't run and leave them either. So that mutual respect, I think I think it all comes back to the first thing I said. It's all in God's hands.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, so I'm also curious about, like, in the show, there was, especially towards the end, right, there was this ham radio or whatever decipher to listen in to pick up the signals and the end result was he was still communicating with his loved ones, whether I don't know if this is real or not, and that was the downfall of him. And what Tyler had mentioned earlier, when I watched the show and they portray him as a monster, and they show the evil things that he does, and then they also show he's a human being. And even the last episode, there's a voiceover of Boyd, and I don't know if these are exact words, but in the end, he's just a man without shoes, fat, whatever, right? Just another human being. And I was conflicted because I'm like, here is this guy who loves his family and is just a human being at the end of the day. And why am I feeling like feelings of um, empathy?
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I have just seen real news clippings intercut with this fictional footage of 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 I mean the one of the ones that was most disturbing was that plane
Mm-hmm.
and like the flesh of bodies just on the ground, right? And I'm going, how am I feeling like
Mm-hmm.
these empathy feelings for this person, and at the same time knowing that he just did this thing, and I'm like conflicted. I'm like, I shouldn't have these feelings for someone like this. Um, but I know that that makes good storytelling as a filmmaker. And so obviously I understand why they're doing that. But I was curious about your thoughts on that, uh, coming from firsthand experience.
Yeah. I had the same feelings. So you know what it is? It's Wagner Mora. He's that good of an actor.
Yeah.
He had me feeling sorry for Pablo Escobar. I couldn't believe it. And then, it was like, oh crap, I can't feel like that's Escobar. But we give, because we've answered this question before, and Javier and I have talked about it. It's his acting ability. He did such a good job that he had us feeling sorry for Pablo. And
Yeah.
one thing you mentioned there about him loving his family, and that's one of the myths that I don't agree with. I'm sure he did love them, but people like to say he was a dedicated family man, and he's a Robin Hood. He's not a dedicated family man. If you've got $30 billion, and you want to dedicate yourself to your family, how much do you need more than 30 billion to have a good life?
Yeah.
You can buy just about anything in the world with that. So if he was a really dedicated family man, he got the deal of a lifetime. He built his own luxury prison, which turned out to be a country club. He only had to do 5 years in prison. I mean, you should have seen the place. It had a bar in the prison where they could, invite. They had a lot of parties up there. They had hookers were coming and going almost every day up there. It's amazing what was going on in that place. He was going and spending long weekends with his family at the Monaco building where his wife and children lived. He just came and went as he pleased. So, he's got a cushy lifestyle to start with, where before he had to have Sicarios protecting him. Now he's got the government of Colombia protecting him. I mean, it's a great business move on his part. And so do your 5 years, come out and say, I'm a free man, I'm done. Good luck to everybody else. And then go live with your family. Watch your children grow up, have your grandchildren. That, to me, is what a dedicated family man would have done in his position.
Sure.
But we all saw what he didn't do. The other is that Robin Hood myth that's out there. Robin Hood was known to take from the rich and give to the poor. And Pablo did that, but, and there's always a but, right?
Uh-huh.
He built clinics. He built free housing for people that were living on the edge of a trash dump. He built soccer fields. He gave away money. He gave away food, and all of those are really, really good things. But when his sicarios were being killed, and he needed to recruit new sicarios, where do you think he went? Right back
there.
into that barrio, right?
Yeah.
And he would come in there. We had people tell us stories that had witnessed this. He would meet them he would refer to it as La Terraza. And we never knew what that was until a few years ago. It was the terrace around a Catholic church in Medellin, in the poor section of Medellin. And so word would get out that Pablo's coming, and, he would show up and he'd hug and kiss these kids, and he's sicarios are passing out money. And then everybody wants to hear what Pablo's got to say. And he's like, oh, my friends, Pablo loves you, and I'm here to recruit some people who are willing to kill for Pablo, who are willing to die for me. Because you see what the government's trying to do to me. I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to build something for you, the poor, and make your lives better. Well, he might need 100 sicarios. The sad thing was there probably 300-400 of those kids would step up. And we're talking about age range from 14 to 19, 20 years old. These kids knew their life expectancy was only a couple years at most, because they were extremely violent. They're fighting the Cali cartel. They're fighting the government. They're fighting the gringos. But they were, Javier was in a position one time. He went with some Columbia police officers to arrest this kid that was 15 years old at a club, and he was a known sicario for Pablo. So the kid was out on the dance floor with his girlfriend. They went and got him, had a big fight, finally got him subdued, took him in, and the kid would talk, and they said, well, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I'm a sicario for Pablo Escobar. He said, I will kill for Pablo. I'll die for Pablo. And they said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, Pablo put a bounty on Colombian National Police officers of $100 apiece. He said, so I've already killed 10 cops. This kid's 15 years old. They said, well, what would you do? And he said, you find uniformed cops out there on the street, which they're everywhere in Colombia. And he said, you catch them with their back turned, you just walk up behind them and shoot them in the back of the head. He said, I killed 3 in one day. There's an address we would go to. I got $300. Well, what do you do with that money? Well, most of the money went to my mom because, we were living on the trash dump, but then Pablo has housing now. And so she now lives in a little apartment that she doesn't have to pay for. And she's got electricity, she's got running water, and she's got a lock on her front door. So you can kind of see where that loyalty comes from. And he said, so she gets most of the money. He said, I keep a little bit of money for beer money and tennis shoes and a pair of jeans. And he said, that's all I need. I mean, so this Robin Hood thing, rather than calling him Robin Hood, we kind of coined the name that Pablo was a master manipulator.
Yeah.
Because he manipulated these poor people. It's just, this guy took advantage he and his organization
Master
took advantage
of the puppets.
of the poorest of the poor. There was, we've got pictures of some of the informants that Pablo would torture and kill. It's horrific. It's not something that, we show it during our presentations, but we only put them on the screen for a couple seconds because they're so bad. But it's what it's all about is all about his greed, his ego, his self-power, his self-image. It's all about him. Family secondary. Everybody else in the world is tertiary. They're way on down the road, But if they can help do something for Pablo, well, he'll be nice to them. And then when they don't serve his purpose anymore, kill them. There's absolutely nothing good about this guy at all. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, I'm sure Sam knows by now, but I'm like a student of Steve. Like I've consumed so much of like the media. I've consumed your book. He has this amazing book. Sam, you should totally listen to it.
I'm gonna order it on
Manhunt.
your
Good
Manhunt off of DA Narcos, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
I'll be the one that mails it to you.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna put in an order probably today.
It'll be autographed, and if you want me to put a little message in there, I will.
That's awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's there's a part in that book, and I just think about like Steve. You talk about like what you're doing now, the podcast and Netflix series, and how you get credited now for like this case that you and Javier worked. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in your book, that wasn't always the case. If I'm not mistaken, if I'm remembering the right part of your book, like the Colombian government gave you a medal, they gave you the recognition that you deserved, but I think some other agents or a different agency or there was a transfer that happened and other people took credit for the takedown of Pablo Escobar. And we can, and if you can't talk about this, like that's fine, we can edit this part out, but that would really piss me off if that was me, where it's like you take down or you play a part in taking down one of the most evil men that's ever walked this earth, and a couple of suits or a different agency or whatever come in and take the credit for it. I guess my question is, I'm thinking out loud, is did that happen? How did you react when it happened? If it did, if I remember the story correctly, and what was it like finally, like after all these years, knowing that like you put in the work and the effort and the blood, sweat, and tears? Because we've talked about how you've been to like cops' funerals and how you had these you'd have to go to Domino's to kind of get out of your own head. Mm-hmm. And to do all that sacrifice and have somebody else take the credit for your work, I guess, what was that like when that happened? And then what is it like now, knowing that like some of these frauds, these grifters, I guess we could call them, if my words, not yours, mm-hmm. that now the world knows what Steve and Javier did to help bring down this monster. Can you go into that story at all?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Did I get it right? Did I remember the story right?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of people take credit for it. the true people who took down Pablo Escobar, and we say this in every presentation we do, the true heroes in this whole thing are the Colombian National Police, because they took their country back from the world's first narco terrorist is what Pablo was. He really was. He was the world's most wanted criminal. Remember the show America's Most Wanted? They actually came down and did one episode in their whole career, their whole time that they were on the air. They only did one episode of the world's most wanted. We took them up to Medellin for a week with camera crews and sound crews, and they did one episode on that. So that's the guy we're talking about here. There are some other 3-letter agencies, particularly one that likes to take credit for a lot of things, and they're a very secretive intel agency. I love them. I highly respect that agency. I'll be honest with you, because they are not allowed to tell about all the good things they do. And we've got so many politicians and people that, conspiracy theorists that always point the finger at them, but they can't tell you what really happened. There's some real heroes in there. The ones we worked with, not so much. There was a lot of personality conflicts, but in the field, we got along. In the embassy, not so, that's where all the issues were. But then later on, after I returned to the United States in 94 and Javier came back in 94, you didn't go into your new office and say, hey, I killed Pablo Escobar. What'd you do yesterday? I didn't talk about it. If you ask me, I'll tell you the whole thing. I'd answer questions, but for just sitting around shooting the breeze, I wouldn't tell you about the Escobar case. Yeah. And it's amazing because some of my best friends never knew about Escobar that I was involved in it until after I retired. When we took the actors to the DEA Academy, the guy from Public Affairs, who's an agent, who's one of my best friends, I love him to death. He's retired now also. Had him on the show, as a matter of fact. He says in his interview, he's like, Murph, I didn't know what your connection was to the Escobar investigation. I didn't know why you're bringing these actors up there, how you got involved with. I thought you started a company, maybe a production company or something. And he said, then I found out it was you and Javier that helped bring him down. So it wasn't public knowledge. But while we're still in the career, still in the job, we would go to law enforcement conferences. And, cops might end up in a bar after, in the evenings. And you got cops from all over the country, from all different agencies, and starting to get tanked up a little bit. And we were in Hilton Head one time, and a couple of DEA guys from New York. These guys, I love the guys in New York, but they're always stirring the pot, man. They're always trying to get something going, And they came over like, hey, Murph, you see that guy over there from Customs? He says he's the one that took down Pablo Escobar. And I said, really? So he's over there telling the story now. Why don't you go tune him up? I'm like, let me just go see what he's saying. So I just kind of joined the circle there and listened. And he's talking about all the things he did in Colombia. And I'm thinking, dude, I've never seen you in my life. And I didn't say a word. And the New York guys couldn't take it. Finally, they step up and they're like, hey, do you know who the hell this is over here? This is the guy that took the pictures of Pablo Escobar. This is the guy that they show, they're like this. He's one of the case agents down there. And it was always funny because there was a bureau agent did that one time, FBI agent did that one time at another conference. And when that happens, when somebody calls them out, they go, oh, geez, I got to go call my wife. I'll see you guys later. So I always thought it was funny, to be honest with you. If you got to toot your own horn, funny. It's not worth tooting. So if those guys are down there bragging, that's all it is bragging. It never offended me. Now in retirement, there have been a couple of, just one really, retired agent who has done some documentaries, and he doesn't come out and say that he did it, but he's a very good speaker. He's very eloquent. He knows all the details, and when I listen to it, I'm thinking, holy cow, this guy took down Pablo. And then I didn't even recognize him when I saw him on TV. And then when they showed his name, he was one of the guys with us in Colombia. He came to Medellin one time. He didn't even spend the night. I mean, he came up for a day trip. The rest of the time, he stayed in the embassy where it was safe. So, having said all that, it's just more comical than it is anything else. And Javier would probably get mad about it. He's got a short fuse when it comes to things like that. I just think it's more funny than anything else. I mean, I know the truth and I tell the truth. And that's the thing about our speaking business and our book. It's all true. You know, it's what makes it easy to tell the story after 10 years. It's still, it never changes if you tell the truth.
It's true. Well, I have to say, I mean, literally just from the second you when I logged on and you popped on screen, I immediately felt like I could trust you. Like,
you don't know me too well, do you?
no, well, and I thought to myself, okay, one, you could get yourself in trouble here. Two, that's why he did so good in the DEA and doing his business, because there was just something that I was like, I can trust this guy.
You know, I just said this in excuse me. I did another interview, yesterday, or day before yesterday out in California. My opinion is I was a uniform cop for 6 years. I was a railroad cop for 6 years, and I was DEA agent for 26 years. I refer to uniform cops as real cops because they're the ones having to answer the call as it comes out to whatever they run into on the streets. You know, they don't have time. They don't have the luxury of time to prepare to address a situation. They've got to go to a call immediately. Somebody's in distress, they go. And when you're in uniform, and this is an old way of thinking. This is old school. I'm getting ready to say, when I was in uniform, even on the midnight shift, our lieutenant, we had inspection at night. Now we only had 5 or 6 guys on the street, so we're in a small town. But he expected you to have your shoes shine and your uniform looking good and shave and have shorter hair and all that. I used to have hair. I don't have too much left up here now, but it was a sense of pride. And you're supposed to set an example for the public. So we see so many cops getting in trouble now. And quite honestly, it's less than 1% of all cops in the United States. A lot less than 1%. This might not even be, I don't even think it's 0.5%. But when one of them makes a bad decision or does something stupid, the media just exploits the hell out of that, right? Because it brings in viewers and that sells ads. And that's what it's all about. When cops do good things, you rarely hear about that because that goes on, thousands of times a day. And you don't go into this job for the recognition or the thank yous, but it's nice, that people respect your position or respect the uniform. So it just seems like if you're going to set an example, we had to have clean police cars. You don't go speeding around and cutting people off in traffic and doing the things that you might give somebody else a ticket for. But I was sitting in traffic. I live in Orlando. I was sitting in traffic the other day, and people here are nice until they get behind the wheel. And this is what they do. When they're sitting at a red light, they're on that phone. They're not paying attention. And traffic is horrendous here. It's not really good. And so that light changes, and you've only got a short amount of time to get a bunch of cars through, and they're just sitting there. And so I've blown the horn at people more here than probably anywhere else I've lived, except Bogota. There in Bogota, it's like an unwritten rule. You have to blow the horn to everybody. And so this little white SUV in front of me just sitting there, and I gave him like 3 or 4 seconds, and finally I just laid on I got a big Dodge truck, and I laid on that horn, and I saw him look up in the mirror, and he starts going. And when he got up and made the curve, it was an Orange County deputy sheriff. And I thought, well, he got the message. He kept going. But, I guess the whole, and believe me, I'll be the last person to disparage a cop, unless if they're a dirty cop, there's nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. So I think they should be under the prisons. But, take pride in what you do. I know a lot of cops around here. I know a lot of cops around the world, and most of them are very proud of their occupation, and they do take pride in their job. They'd probably tell me, "Hey, you old fart, quit thinking like it was 1970 again." But I just think that's the way it should be. You're a public servant. I look at that. A lot of people think public servant is a derogatory term. I don't. I look at it as a badge of honor, because tell me another occupation that has a higher calling than serving your fellow man. Serving people you don't know, and most of them hate you, right? Just because you got a uniform on. So I love that title of a public service. It really is a badge of honor. But with that goes responsibility, and you need to live up to that responsibility. The vast majority of law enforcement in the United States does that. They risk their lives on a daily basis, especially the uniform officers now. I mean, we're seeing so many ambushes, and just a traffic stop will get you killed now. It's amazing the things that are going on in our country. I wish I had an answer to stop it, but until, I guess Murph's little opinion here would be, until the people are willing to accept responsibility for their actions, I don't see things changing. I think it's just going to get worse. And honestly, I don't see a whole lot of things, not to go political, but I don't see a whole lot of things in Washington that encourage that type of thinking.
Yeah. Well, and it's yeah, it's just crazy and wild because I mean, even in a very safe part of the world where I live in, just the craziest things have happened. Like a few years ago, one of my childhood best friends, and his older brother, who was a good friend of mine, he was shot and killed. He was an officer on duty, shot and killed. Had a just checking in on a warrant or a wanted person in a vehicle, and just the one area on his vest that had an opening is where the bullet went through, and died, not too shortly after, left, a wife and a baby. And then later she found out she was pregnant with their child, and it was just a hard thing. But he was just a good dude doing like the best he could as a public servant, and just the shade that gets thrown on a lot of the good, honest public servants that show up not for any sort of recognition or fame, but just to serve the community. It really is unfortunate that so much of the negative of, like you said, the very small amount that just get put up on the spotlight and set as an example for everything as a whole, even though it's not, like, really puts a poor image on the good people doing the good work.
Right. It is. It's, and if you think about it, I mean, name an occupation that doesn't have people that go rogue. Doctors, lawyers, podcasters. I mean, everybody. Every occupation in the world, there's people that just dishonor whatever the occupation is.
Steve, I was with Sam having watched, I'm changing the subject a little bit. With Sam having just recently watched Netflix, like I was thinking back, not Netflix, Narcos. Sam watches Netflix, Narcos. Like what's your like favorite scene in that show? Like, is there a scene where you just feel like the most represented, or the one that like that you just feel seen, or you feel like they just captured the essence of you? Or because like I was like thinking of like the scenes. There's two scenes that came to my mind when I was thinking about this. Is one is when you guys rescue Olivia after the bombing and you bring her home. I was like, I feel like that it reminded me of this first time you and I talked on the podcast where we talked about that little girl from New York. I was like, I bet that's exactly what happened after her podcast, is that he went to his wife and he was like, you won't believe the shit I just heard on this podcast. I was like, I bet that's Steve's exact reaction. So I was like, that captures the essence of Steve, where like he just felt so deeply about something that he had to do something radical. In my case, it was helping Libertas. In Olivia's case, it was adopting Olivia. And then also just every scene with you and Pedro and Javier and Boyd, I really enjoy. But the one where you guys are shooting the pigeons and you kind of poke fun at Pedro's aim, because he's like, you call me a lousy shot. I was like, that just it's two people that are thrust into this like situation of intense trauma, this intense danger, and it's still just two dudes talking shit to each other about how shitty their aim is. I was like, that is what they're doing in this moment to survive. And I love those two scenes. And I was just curious of like, do you have a favorite scene for one, like in the show overall, and you can answer both if you want. It's or like a part of the show where it's like they captured me. This is as close as Steve Murphy's representation as we can get.
I've never thought about that. Nobody's ever asked that question. I can't
Way to
think
go,
of
Tyler.
We're good podcasters.
There you go. You know me too well. Which Tyler, you actually do know me pretty well. The scene with Olivia, and so you know this, Tyler, but Sam, you may not know this. My wife and I actually adopted 2 little girls down there, but the first one wasn't like it's portrayed in the show, where Murph and JP had just been running across the roof and shooting people and killing them, and come walking back, and there's that little girl, and Murph scoops her up, says, "I'm gonna take her home." Even in Colombia, it's called kidnapping. You can't do that, right? And we just went through normal channels. And our first daughter's from Zipaquirá, which is just north of the city of Bogota, and she was 8 months old when we got her. And so that's Olivia. Her real name's Monica. And then right before we left country, after Pablo was killed, we adopted our second daughter, Mandy. She was 5 months old, and she's from Medellin. So that was kind of interesting. It was supposed to be in season 2, but for whatever reason, they cut it out of the show. It's not in season 2. What else on there? There's a lot of inaccuracies in there, I guess would be. Well, that's not answering your question, though. I honestly can't think of one particular scene that. I mean, I don't think they portrayed my wife being brave and working out in the comuna in that hospital, which she wasn't allowed to work outside the embassy because of security reasons. So she started out.
I wondered that.
Yeah, she started working out in the APO, which is the embassy post office, and then eventually she and another lady became the community liaison officers, which when new American employees come to the embassy, they help them get established, help them find a place to live, and help them get acclimated to the new city and all that stuff. And then eventually she got hired as a kind of like a secretary by DEA, which was good because we had offices right next door to each other. But there were times when we would draw threats, and they would put where we lived was in the north part of the city, and there was 3 buildings in our compound, and these were unbelievably nice apartments. I've never lived in a nicer place. I couldn't afford that in the United States. And in these 3 buildings, you had a wall around it with guards, and then each building was locked, and there was a guard inside that had to let people in. And then when you got on the elevator, you had to have a special key to turn the elevator on. And then when you got on the elevator, your apartment was the only apartment on that floor. So your key would get you to your apartment and no other floors. So and then you got off, and there's an outer foyer, and you had multiple locks and alarm systems you had to unlock and turn off. So it was a pretty secure environment. But occasionally, when threats would come along, the embassy would put additional guards around your building, around that outer wall. And my wife, I'm in Medellin, so she's there by herself. That's why I say she's braver than I ever thought, because I got 600 guys with me. She's all by herself. And we lived about 3 blocks from the biggest mall in Bogota. Unicentro was the name of it. And she'd come walking out and walk to the mall, go shopping. And as she walked by, she'd say hi to the portero, the guards on our door, and then on the gate. And the embassy guards had no clue who she was. They didn't realize that's who they're supposed to be protecting. And so they're just sitting there smoking cigarettes and shooting the breeze. And then she'd come back a few hours later, and she'd wave at everybody. They'd wave back. She'd go back in the apartment. It was just funny, some of the things that went on. But, I mean, other than that, they didn't show a lot of the good times we had, because we were very good at Americans were very good at taking care, looking out for each other. Like when I was gone, I didn't worry about Connie because I knew all the other agents and their wives were looking out for her. And when we would throw our parties, if it's going to be Saturday night, whoever's place it was, like 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, people start stopping by and dropping off food and start dropping off bottles of alcohol and cases of beer. And by the time things are rolling that evening, we've got a feast there, and we had, I don't know, people that would come in and be waiters and take up, clean up for us and things like that. And sometimes we might have a mariachi band come in. And if it was a going away party, we had a tradition called the Circle of Gold, and that involved Cuervo gold. tequila. So that was very, very
good.
nasty. A lot of good memories came out of it. But so that's one thing they did not capture was a lot of the good times that we had down there. I mean, there's a lot of danger. So you worked hard, but you know, I don't even drink now. I stopped drinking alcohol over 20 years ago, but I think I drank enough in Colombia to last me a lifetime, to be honest with you. Hey, Tyler, have you tried aguardiente down there?
Yeah, I don't like it.
I
No,
don't
I
either.
don't. I don't like
Tastes
it.
like
No.
licorice. Tastes like ouzo.
Yeah, no, it's disgusting. And I, while I'm talking through this with you too, I really I know this didn't happen. I want that very clear. But I imagine just the conversation that you and I have had when it comes to like some of the stuff that you help out with Libertas and some of these people, maybe like for example the guy that trafficked, our mutual friend Blue. I feel like the scene in the bathroom is probably a pretty accurate representation of what you'd like to do to some of these people if that badge wasn't a hindrance to you. Because I mean, if I was put in your shoes and
at the airport.
yeah,
Mhm.
yep, where you are,
It's not true.
it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
No.
It didn't happen. But you've seen at this point, like you've seen like the horror that like these people inflict. You see like the lives that it's costing, and and then you go to the bathroom and one of your American friends is consuming this product that's financing all this terror. I mean, I can understand in a different world where there's not a badge and maybe there's not witnesses where that guy would definitely get an ass kicking.
Yeah. There's a lot of times you'd want to. I know one of the problems I had as a uniform cop is if you went to a child abuse case,
Yeah.
it was hard not to take my personal feelings out on them. But if you do, you're no better than them. I took an oath. I don't want to betray my oath, but I'll be honest with you, it didn't happen a lot, but it took a lot of restraint. It took a lot of restraint not to just lash out at somebody for doing that to a child. This thing with what you're doing in Libertas, man, you're my hero. It's what you've done. I don't have heroes, but if I did, you'd be right there at the top. It's amazing. I tell your story every opportunity I get. We're actually going to be in San Diego together in late May this year at a conference. Sam be the first time he and I get to meet in person.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so
very
that's pretty cool. And I can't wait to hear the story. Because I know you're bringing a special guest with you, and it's just
incredible.
It is. It breaks your heart. I mean, when you told about that 19-month-old little girl, what her mom was doing to her, Sam, I don't know if you've seen that episode, but I had to stop the podcast. I couldn't hold the tears back. If I start thinking about it too much, it'll start coming again. It just breaks your heart that somebody would do that to a child. My gosh.
No, it's been Sam and I have talked about this. There's an episode coming out. Actually, it's the one that came out this last week, Sam. What gets you up in the morning is Sam. He's been a supporter of like my work forever. Like he knows some of the girls. He financially supports. And this year, he just with the stuff that I've told you about, with some of the threats and stuff going on, and some of the girls that have made their way up here, Sam's gotten a chance to like get to meet a lot of these people like in person, like interact with them, volunteer essentially, like using his time, not just his resources, with Libertas, and
nice.
And it's been awesome to have him, see him give the survivors another safe place to land. Because like Sam, I don't know if you knew I was watching when we went to the Dominican place, right? Remember this like a few weeks back?
Yeah.
So we were outside, and this special guest Murph that you're talking about, who's coming. Sam he's kind of like, I wouldn't call it like a mentor, but he's befriending one of her daughters who's in a new place, in a new world, and trying to get her footing on what living in Utah looks like. And I don't think Sam knew I was watching, but I was watching because I'm very observant.
I'm curious.
And at the end of the day, like she just like hugged Sam. This woman, like this grown survivor, she just hugged Sam for, I don't know, probably 45, 50 seconds. And I just watched this whole thing, and I was like, that's just so, just so happy that like he provided like a safe space for her family, for her to where she can, you don't speak the same language, you know, like there's still like that Google Translate thing that sometimes comes up, but she recognized him as a safe person, as a member of the safe community, and gave him a hug, and it just lasted like 45, 50 seconds from what I was counting. Like, I don't know if that's the actual how long it lasted, Sam, but it was right when we were getting ready to say goodbye. And I was just watching. I was just thankful. Did you know this? Did you know I was watching?
I did not. I did not. I do remember the hug though, because I was like, "Oh, she's holding on,"
Yeah.
and which was very humbling for me because one, why do I get to be an individual that she gets to put so much trust in, especially when she shouldn't have. I mean, how do I even put this? Um, the world has given her no reason to put trust in anything or anyone.
True.
So now, why am I in a position that that is being put on me? What have I done to deserve that? Right. Um, so that was very humbling for me to be there and to be a recipient of that. And I was just grateful to be able to then just let her hold on and hug for as long as she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
There's nowhere in the world I'd rather be than in that moment at that time for them.
You
right?
you know what that is? I mean, people stand back and they hear things and they say somebody ought to do something. Well, you know what? You two guys, you stepped up and you're doing something. You're not the ones that stay back and say somebody should do something. You're stepping up to the plate and doing something. I'll tell you what, as long as I'm alive, I'll support Libertas because I'm just so proud of what you're doing. Sam, whether you want to admit it or not, man, peripherally, you're supporting it as well. Um, just, the young lady I'm working with now that you introduced me to, can't wait to have her on the show. We're going to wait till her case is over, but we've already talked about it. And, she's willing to tell her story. I mean, that girl has got the biggest stones. She reminds me of my wife. She's not afraid of anything. She's been beat up. She's been abused her whole freaking life. She treats me with the utmost respect. We're actually working together now. You guys know about it, but for your listeners there, she's helping me out with my podcast. And good Lord knows I need I need a hell of a lot of help.
No, even that, like that's such a beautiful story to me too, because like I've admired Steve I saw Steve on Narcos. Like it was a pandemic watch for me. I was like, oh, like we're all stuck in this house. What's Narcos? And it's in Colombia. And I was, watching the story, and obviously I'd known Boyd from Logan. That's my favorite movie. I was like, oh, this is what he did before Logan. And I was watching, and then I bought his book. I consumed all of his media, and I reached out to Steve because I just someone has looked evil in the face in Colombia and won or like held their ground. I was like, I just need someone in my life that has done that and that can teach me how to do it. And through all of our conversations, these podcasts, these like with these connections that Steve's making to get the message out there to more people, this girl came into the foundation who, like Steve said, has the biggest stones that I've ever met. Like this girl, she has no reason to still be here, none. Like from what she's gone through, like she was trafficked by family, she was taken overseas. There's a guy that tried to teach her like Nazi principles. Like this girl she has no reason to still be here, and she's still here. And the fact that you two connected and that you're willing to pay her for her creativity, that you're willing to like take the time and listen to her as like this person, because she has no concept of like what a father or grandfather looks like. And she has maybe 3 or 4 men in her life that she actually trusts. And so that another guy that comes in that knows what she's going through, that knows what it's like to go through a long case, that knows what it's like to fight evil and to have doubts like throughout that journey, to someone to come in and cultivate her creativity and help her with her creativity to make an impact that she wants to make. Like I've seen her in this process heal so much because she has another guy that she trusts. She has another guy that's investing in her. She has another guy that knows maybe not what she's been through physically, but knows what it's like to fight through a court case and that's going to entail. And so, man, I just like even Steve, like just thank you for doing that with her. Like, there's two people that have saved Columbia in the past, Steve Murphy and Blue, and the fact you guys are connected and working together and engaging in conversation, and that she's coming on the Game of Crimes podcast, and that she just has one more person, one more guy, one more male that can teach her what it looks like to be a decent male in this world. Like, that's just so freaking beautiful, man.
I know she's phenomenal. I don't know if she's using a like Chat GPT or something, but her English writing is, I'm impressed with it. Maybe she's using a Google translator, but and her ideology and her strategies are sound and thinking of things. I mean, we communicate on Telegram. I couldn't even figure out how to, I would hit the enter button to try to create a space between paragraphs, and it would send the message.
Yeah.
And I sent her a message. I was like, how do you do this? And it was so simple. She showed me how to do it,
That's cool.
I mean, just what she's maybe 18, 19 years old.
19. Yeah, just turned 19.
I'm totally impressed. And the numbers keep going up. She has taken Game of Crimes on TikTok and on Instagram higher than I ever dreamt it would go. So
that's cool.
I'm honored to be working with her, and we've had one video call between us, and I'm as proud of her as I am my own children. And I kind of look at her as I mean, I've got granddaughters that are almost as old as her, and it just, I think good Lord puts people in your path that, it causes you to stop and think, look at the life I've got, and then look at the life she has or had. Why would you not step up and help somebody like that? You guys, Sam, you might not be down there with Tyler when they're actually raiding places, but you're contributing, you're donating, you're getting the word out about what Libertas does. I mean, that's just as important as them out there going and doing the job, because they couldn't do it if they didn't have the financial resources. So that's I'm real happy to be talking to you guys.
Well, I mean, thank you, and I felt very much the same way. And Tyler's always like, Steve.
And then you see this old man on here, and you're going, what the hell?
But yeah, like, and Tyler and I have had conversations about this, because I go, okay, well, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a storyteller, I'm a dreamer, a creative, right? And I go, where do I fit in like this world of actually contributing to good? And like, I look at, okay, well, I get to wake up every day and like my day looks like this, and then I go, or Tyler wakes up and his day looks like this, and I go, well, there's a lot of meaning in my life, and I'm not, and I say that in jest, but I also go, wow, I mean, the impact that Tyler and you do versus the impact that I do, like, if you're comparing in comparison, it's not really fair, but in comparison, it's like, yeah, well, one goes a lot further than the others in terms of contributing to society, and then I have had to step back and go, well, they're just different functions, right? And now, I mean, like, take Narcos, the series, and what that has done to help further this cause, to further this conversation, to further, Libertas and all of these things. And I go, yeah, like, well, I can participate in stories that can help bring awareness or a message. And one of the most recent ones for me has been a short film that I hope to make a feature film at some point. Granted, we can get funding behind it, but it's the story of like this 16-year-old girl in this awful situation of like in true scenarios, right? And it gives a voice to that character who, that might be a fictional character, but there's a girl just like her, multiple girls just like her in these situations, that this story can now give a voice to them, or at least that they can see it and go, oh my gosh, they are taking action. Maybe I can take action, And I go, that's where my world now can contribute. and that's more. I mean, just as much as entertainment in film that I like and I go to enjoy and escape the world, I also want to participate in bringing those stories to life to help share that message or to help bring awareness. So that's been kind of a fun enlightenment that has happened the last little bit, especially knowing Tyler of like, well, here's where how I can contribute because, um, it's sometimes it's easy just to go, here's a dollar bill
Yeah.
and then turn away, right?
Yep.
But what about here's a dollar bill and show up to personally hand it out and be there and whatever, right?
Hey, just like Tyler said, you gave a victim, a former victim, a shoulder to cry on, to feel safe on, and if it was 45 seconds, that was 45 seconds she felt safe.
Yeah.
So we're having this
Well,
big bro fest here, a big love fest
yeah.
right now. So
Well, I gotta say,
yeah,
like, I felt safe
Yeah.
with her embrace
yeah,
and her kids' embrace, and and one of her kids. I mean, I love both of her kids, but and Tyler knows this. One of her kids, for whatever reason, she has just found a safe place in me, and I'm like, well, why?
yeah,
I don't deserve this. I'm like this redheaded, long-haired, scary-looking fella, and 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 here I have this young, less than 10-year-old girl who wants to snuggle underneath my arm and watch her favorite little TV show when everyone's together, and I'm
wow,
like, I guess I'll be here. I'll be here on
yeah.
this corner if you need me, right?
With all the other crap that goes on in our lives, I mean, what a nice, a nice few minutes of respite there, where
Yeah.
you're just giving comfort to a child. That's great. That's fantastic.
Well, and one thing that I remember, that I hear the words of Tyler a lot. He's just like, it's moments like that when an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old or a 15-year-old, whatever the ages are, get to be and feel like an 8-year-old, 10-year-old,
Yeah,
12-year-old, 14-year-old should feel like.
yeah,
And that's like the most important thing. Is like above all else, like nothing else matters,
hmm,
at that point. So I'm super grateful that one Tyler's kept me around and still a buddy of mine. And then I get to spend time and hear stories from people like yourself, Steve. So I mean, I just feel very fortunate.
Well, thank you.
Um,
I appreciate you guys giving me the platform.
Well, the pleasure's ours, Steve. And I guess I know you're probably pressed for time. I know you have a conference call here in a bit, but
Yeah, I'm still got a while.
Sam, do you have any last thoughts for Steve or last questions?
well, so this is I did have a thought. It's a little different. But it kind of relations. So at the end, when they're listening to Pablo's conversations, it made me think of another Netflix show, and I think it's called like Make Believe Web of Lies or something, and it is kind of like a documentary of real life stories or whatever. And there was a hacker who was frauding all sorts of things, and they ended up catching him, and he was arrested, and he was in jail, and he represented himself, and he spent all this time to go, how they caught me is they cheated. I know they cheated, and he like wrote out what he thought the system was, and it was called the Stingray or something, where it like listens to telephones and cell phone signals, and that's how they caught him. And so anyways, it reminded me of that, and I just go, okay, so that happens in Colombia, it happens in the United States, and I just go, what isn't being monitored in our daily lives, and what isn't being accessed, right? And like, is there any privacy? And maybe this is not even a right question to ask, but it's just we live in a world that's so heavily monitored and monitored more than ever now. Uh, I go, well, then how does crime still exist to the extent that it exists? But then also, should we limit those things to protect also the privacy of private civilians? And I wish I had more information on this thing, but I know it's called the Stingray, and
Yeah,
he
that's a real
even he
device. That's a real device.
and he even like now has like countersued, and um, they ended up dropping the case because they didn't want to reveal information to do what they did, and blah 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 blah. Anyways, it's a very interesting story, but the Stingrays, that must be the device where it's like it sends out a fake signal that pings to a cell phone tower that then pings back to locations that gives a geographical region or something or rather. Anyways, I guess I don't even know what I'm trying to ask right now, Steve, other than uh, like I'm just curious. I watched that episode on Narcos, and I go, "Well, this is how he was caught, and then this is in the States." And how do we have so much crime that still exists, but also how do we protect our private sectors and our just
Right.
everyday civilian private life? And is there a happy balance? And will there ever be to totally keep us safe from people like Pablo?
That's some pretty deep thinking there. I think the only privacy you have now on communications is probably things like WhatsApp or Telegram, encrypted communications, which has made chasing criminals much, much more difficult. They're as aware as anybody else. They hire technicians that know how to do this kind of stuff. That can hide their communications so they cannot be intercepted. Sometimes they screw up, and then the good guys capitalize on it. When they make these encrypted programs free, like WhatsApp, when I travel outside the country, that's how I communicate with my wife. And we can do video calls, we can do phone calls, I can send messages back and forth. It doesn't cost me a penny. But the same token, we are giving up investigative means that had worked in the past. And the narcos, especially the narcos, but most criminals in general, really successful criminals, I'm not talking about street crime, but really successful criminals, they have the funds to pay for things like that. The narcos always had more money than we ever had. They always had better equipment. They always had better weapons. It was amazing. The Cali cartel had their own telephone intercept system like we had. They had access to all the phone records in Colombia. You look at that traitor, Edward Snowden, who worked at the National Security Agency and divulged, classified information. I can't tell. I know about the program because it's actually a DEA program. I can't tell you about it because it's still classified. But what I can tell you is that because of what he did, it shut the program down. He was making accusations that Big Brother was listening and there was no oversight. That's completely false. Everything that was done on that program was done with a judge's approval. Everything. I mean, it's. I wish I could tell you more. I can't, but it was one of the most successful programs I've ever seen, and all because he didn't know what he was talking about, and he decided to betray his own country. Americans are not as safe now from drug trafficking as they were, and that's all I can say about it. So, people look at me. I'm sure most people wouldn't agree with this. I don't do anything that I care if the government knows.
Right.
I mean, if they listen to my phone calls, okay. I know that there's certain things that you say on emails or through social media that are considered keywords that may draw attention to you. And I'm going to guess it'd be something like terrorism or, something associated with terrorism.
Right.
But so I really don't care that they listen to what I do. Most Americans are not like that. That is one thing that makes us different from other countries around the world. That's why we are a free country. and we do have an expectation of privacy. So I don't know. I don't know what the happy medium is there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because if you have nothing to hide, then
Why do you care?
why do you care?
I got so many more things in my life that are so much more important than worried about stuff like that. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's in our Constitution, so we do have an expectation of privacy, and I honor that. That's the oath I took, was to honor the Constitution of the United States. That was part of it. So, and I will do that, but I always do it within the confines of the law. I don't go out and do even when I was on the job, we didn't do illegal wiretaps. We did everything with a court order. We did a lot of them, but that's what works.
Yeah.
Steve, I got 3 questions for you.
What you got, brother?
My last 3 questions, the ones that I had written down here, and I was like, I want to get these, get his thoughts on these.
All right.
For one is more like what we're talking about when it comes to like politics. I'd love to know your thoughts, and specifically, like, Sam watched season 1 and season 2 of Narcos, and after the death of Pablo Escobar, where you take your picture, and I think I read in your book you got a lot of heat for that picture later. Mm-hmm. There's still 4 more seasons of Narcos, so obviously, like, the war on drugs continued after the death of like Pablo Escobar, this big kingpin. So I guess my first question would be, as like a former DEA agent, do you consider the war on drugs successful? If you do, why? If you don't, what would you do different? And you can, if you can't answer, that's fine. Like, we can edit that out. You have to answer that. Okay. The second one is
ask them one at a time, because I'll forget.
Okay. Do that one first. Do that one first.
An old man here. Okay. Well, first of all, the war on drugs is one of the biggest misnomers, in my opinion, that the government has ever come up with. We're going after the world's leading producer and distributor of cocaine, Pablo Escobar, a man who was responsible at one time for 80% of the cocaine in the entire world. And what did we send to this war? 2 guys. Is that a war? It's a joke. I love it, because when I say that, people always laugh. And it's true.
That's fair.
So,
well, and it makes you go, well, then did you really want it to stop?
Right. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? So I'm certainly not taking away from the brave men and women that fight this war every day. I'm so proud of them. They were sacrificing. Some make that ultimate sacrifice, but they're sacrificing their families. They're sacrificing their lives. So, I don't mean to say this as a derogatory remark against them. That's not what this is meant to be. But I don't think that we've ever been serious about fighting the war on drugs. I think it's just something that, and we may be a little bit more serious now because of all the fentanyl overdose and opioid overdose deaths we've been experiencing in our country. But look how many years it's been going over 100,000 deaths per year from this. And we're just now starting to see the overdose rates come down a little bit. So, not to go political on you here, but I just think we get a lot of lip service out of Congress and not a lot of action. I think that if it's up to me, we'd have term limits on congressmen, Senate and House side. I don't understand how somebody can come in and can't afford an apartment when they get elected to the House of Representatives, and now they're a multimillionaire a few years later. I mean, I know how it happens, but it just boggles your mind. So here's the sad thing. People say, okay, you guys took out Pablo Escobar. Did that really have a positive effect on illegal narcotics in the world? It did. Probably lasted about 2 weeks, because that was in 1993 when he was killed, December 2nd, 1993. Here we are in 2025. Can you go out on just about any street corner in the United States today and buy cocaine? We all know you can. I mean, I hope it's not in my neighborhood, because we're in a small neighborhood, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Today, back then, Colombia was the leading country in the world for the production of cocaine. You know what country it is today, all these years later?
Colombia.
Still Colombia. I love the country. After the United States, it's my favorite country in the world. But it's the truth, and they recognize it. So, I mean, people say, well, if the war on drugs is a waste, is a joke, we're throwing all this money at it, and we're not seeing any progress. Why don't we do away with it? Why don't we legalize everything? Well, we're already the leading consumer country in the world of illegal narcotics. we see people who cannot take care of themselves anymore because they become addicted. Why do we want to make it easier for people to become addicted? Do you guys, let me ask you, and I don't, whether you ever use drugs or not, I don't care. But do you think if you tried meth or coke that you could become addicted, or heroin? Do you think you could become
Yeah.
addicted? We all
yeah.
know that. So why would people willingly take that chance to become addicted to something that's going to destroy your life? I'm gonna tell you guys something I haven't told on an episode yet. So we're recording this on March 20th of 2025, and less than 2 months ago, my second son passed away, 43 years old, from a meth overdose.
Jeez.
He's been an addict for a number of years. We've had him in rehab 3 times. He went to prison twice because of it. It was devastating to our family. We're kind of getting over it now as time goes by, but he left twin 15-year-old daughters.
Jeez.
So, I honor everybody's right to think the way they want to, but I have no freaking sympathy whatsoever for anybody that thinks drugs should be legalized, and that includes marijuana. People want to say what they want to say about it. We had that on the ballot here in Florida last year. Thankfully, it was voted down. But think about this: why would corporations invest hundreds of millions of dollars to legalize marijuana in different states? Do you think those corporate generals even smoke weed? I bet they don't. It's all about the money.
Yeah.
They say,
The
oh,
money.
the taxes it's going to generate, it's going to fund the police, it's going to fund the school systems, it's going to be billions of dollars. Well, go do a little fact checking. Billions of dollars? Do you realize how much $1 billion is? I mean, it's outrageous. And they come out with all these advertisements saying, oh, there's been these medical reports that support that marijuana actually has a legitimate medicinal purpose. Show me the frickin' report, because I have not found it yet. My other son is an orthopedic surgeon at Children's Hospital of Atlanta. I challenge him all the time, man. Do some research. See if you can find me a new report I don't know about. There are none. You see the commercials online on social media about, oh, CBD. It's been tested. It's been proven. No, it hasn't, because when you click on the link to read the report, it takes you to the website again. It's like a loop. So now I just read a report this morning saying that smoking weed increases your chances for heart attack. I don't do the research. I don't do the studies. I just read and try to learn more to help defend the position that I've taken, that I think any drug legalization is wrong. Oh, I'll get on my little soapbox there every once in a while, but
For sure.
it just frustrates me, that people just believe that. They say, well, it's no worse than alcohol. Well, I don't drink alcohol either. I did when I was younger, and I regret it. I wasted a whole lot of time and brain cells on alcohol that I wish I had the money back for, just to be honest with you. But so anyway, I don't know if I'd answered your question on the war of drugs, but
No, you did.
There's never been 100% go get them type atmosphere. I think we're feeling better about it a little bit now that we've got a new administration in, but even everything's going on there, I don't, they never asked my opinion, but I still don't approve of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Steve.
Yeah, Steve.
No, that's rough.
Sorry about that.
Well, I appreciate it. I don't say it to garner sympathy. It's, there's nothing different about us than everybody else. People think because I was on a TV show or had a show made about my life makes me somebody special. It doesn't. We have the same problems as everybody else.
Yeah. Well, that's actually my second question is what made you say yes to this? Like, what made you say yes to to Narcos? Not the podcast. The podcast I know, because we're good people. We're very welcoming.
Absolutely.
We're chilling. Narcos, because man, Netflix comes to the door and says we're going to tell your story. We're going to tell your story. You can have some input, but not all the input. We're going to see Boyd Holbrook's ass a few times. No answer is bad. Was it the money? Was it the people that you met with Netflix? what made you say yes to these people that wanted to share the story of Javier and Steve Murphy?
Well, and I'll just quickly add in, and as a filmmaker, like I know when we pass this thing over to you and says all you got to do is sign this, that we take it back and go thank you, goodbye, and it now becomes our world.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about Boyd's butt. That scene where I mean, he and his my TV wife were having sex, and they hear the automatic weapons. Well, the automatic weapons part is true. That was our first night in Colombia. We're in a boarding house. We're not even in a hotel. They put us in a boarding house, and it's the middle of the night. We can't sleep, and we hear gunshots. And I rolled over and grabbed my pistol on the nightstand there because we weren't sleeping anyway. And then I'm thinking, well, what do we do? And then we started hearing machine guns. And I'm looking at my gun, going, well, all I'm gonna do is piss somebody off this thing. But the sex thing, that's Hollywood.
That didn't happen. Okay.
No, that part didn't happen. So my wife always.
Well, I can tell you why, for filmmaking purposes, why that happened is because it's like we are showing these individuals in the most intimate of moments, and they are not safe.
Yeah, violence and sex. There you go.
Yeah,
sex, drugs, rock and roll, right? So anyway, so I'm I was still on a job with DEA, living in Northern Virginia, working out of DC in a headquarters position. And I got a buddy that's a small-time producer himself there in Northern Virginia, really, really good friend. And he introduced me to two Hollywood producers on separate events. And, he would tell them a little bit about our story. And so we'd go meet them went to one guy's house. Oh, actually, both of them. We went to their houses and just mansions, And long story short, they wanted to take our story and make political statements out of it. And I try to stay as apolitical as I can. And that's not what we wanted done with the story of Pablo. And, but you get your hopes up and you think that somebody's really interested, and then you get disappointed. So fast forward to 2013, February, I get a call from a retired Marine that we'd worked in Colombia. I hadn't talked to in 20 years. He said, hey, we're catching up a little bit. And I said, well, man, are you in town? Let's get together and go have dinner tonight or something. And he's like, I live here. I actually work on Capitol Hill. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know that. And I said, so what's up? What are you calling for? And he said, well, there's a producer in Hollywood that wants to talk to you about your Escobar story. And so he kind of gave me his thing. And I told him, I said, man, we've been down this road twice. It never works out. And I said, tell the guy thanks, but we're not interested. I don't know how many retired Marines you guys know, but they can be a little colorful with their language. So after he calls me everything in the book, I'm like, okay, I'll call the guy, So I called this guy, Eric Newman. It's funny, isn't it? So I called Eric Newman in Hollywood. I told Javier about it. And he's like, yeah, it's not. He said, I don't want to do that. Okay. So I call Eric, and he starts giving me a spiel, and very nice guy. I mean, I love the guy. I mean, it's just one of these people you like, And when he finished, I said, well, you know what, Eric, we've tried this before and it never works out. So thanks, but no thanks. And it got real quiet on the phone. And, I'm like, you still there? He's like, yeah, but I can't believe you turned me down. And I said, well, we've been through this twice, and, people promise us the world and they never come through. And he said, okay, listen, I'm coming to Washington in a couple of weeks, and a couple of writers on some business. And he said, would you have dinner with us? Just come out and let us give you our idea about how the show would go, and, what the focus would be and the plot and all that stuff. And this is honest God's truth. I'm thinking it's going to be a free dinner in a really nice restaurant. Yes, I will meet you. And it was. We went to some French restaurant. I ordered scallops because that's the only thing I recognized on the menu. I didn't recognize anything else on there. They were ordering bone marrow for appetizers. I'm like, my God, you don't eat this stuff. But they did. So anyway, and so when I went into the restaurant, after being a cop for 38 years, you can pick people out. So I know I'm looking for 3 white guys. And I go into this restaurant, and I see 3 guys sitting there, and I'm thinking, that's them. So I walk over, and I had a suit on and everything. I leaned on the table, and I said, gentlemen, got a report that one of you's holding a baggie of cocaine. I want all three of you to get your ass up on the wall right now. I'm a police officer. And the two writers get these big eyes and they're sitting back in their chairs. And Eric just busts out laughing. He said, "You got to be Murphy." Yeah. It was a great icebreaker, right?
That's great. That's fantastic.
So we had a great laugh. We had a great dinner. And at the end, he said, "So now that we've told you everything, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, you know what? I think I'll call Javier tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Let's, maybe pursue this and see where it goes." And he says, "One more question for you. Why are you guys so hesitant to tell your story?" And we said, "The last thing we ever want to happen is that somebody would take our story and glorify a mass murderer named Pablo Escobar." And Eric said, I'm giving you my word right now that will never happen in this series. And to this day, he's lived up to his word. So that was so we talked on the phone in February. We had dinner in March. At the end of May, we signed contracts with Gaumont International Television, which actually, they're the ones that sold it to Netflix. And at the end of June, I retired. And in July, we were sitting in the writers' rooms in Santa Monica, right outside of Hollywood, right in the first season, with 10 writers who were phenomenal. Oh my gosh, the writers, just every single one of them impressed us. It was unbelievable. These people, they were so well read. They were easy to talk to. They were extremely intelligent. But so I mean, they're a lot of the reason that Narcos was successful. So that's how it all came about. But we actually turned them down to start with.
Well, they did a good job. I think you picked a good company because, just well done. It was, you guys filmed on location. Like, I'm sure Sam, is a filmmaker and a cinematographer. I'm sure there were some scenes where he was just like, "I got to get my ass to Colombia because it looks great."
Beautiful.
Oh yeah, having filmed internationally elsewhere, just not being in America, I feel like whenever I'm out of America, I'm like, anywhere you put the camera, it's beautiful and new, at least right to me. So, but the sweeping shots of Colombia, just over Colombia, and I go, that place, is that really what Colombia is like?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool.
I mean, you got the Andes, you got the Amazon River down the southern part, you got the triple canopy jungle, you got the beaches. I was just we've been to Cartagena twice here in the last several weeks for speaking events. And you go there and you got the big fort still there. You can go up on the walls and walk the walls with the Spaniards built, hundreds of years. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's cool because I have both you guys on the line, so I can share you guys this breaking news real quick with Libertas. Is we got 2 days ago we got a call from the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. Steve, I'm sure you've heard of them. Yeah. I think they're federally funded, and they identified a 10-year-old girl by her school uniform that her uncle, I guess, was abusing her, and her videos are starting to circulate online, and so they're getting uploaded to NCMEC. And so NCMEC contacted us via the U.S. Embassy and asked if we could help because she's in Medellin, and our team is just meeting with her as we speak. So they just signed over the form. It's like the parents sign this form so that Libertas can give aftercare to your girls, and so that's cool. I wanted to mention that because we're talking about Colombia. We're talking about two guys that are part of the foundation that have done so much, and just to give you guys that news, we have a new little 10-year-old kid in our foundation, and then my last question, Steve, is Sam and I talk about this a lot on our podcast because it is a podcast about good stories inside the theater, outside the theater. What movies are your favorite movies, and what kind of TV shows do you enjoy binging or watching in your spare time?
Well, most of my TV watching is. Connie and I are sitting around in the evenings, and I'm usually on my laptop doing things, and I don't pay a whole lot of attention. I like college sports, especially college football, so I do pay attention to that. But when I travel, and I do a lot of travel, I've got my iPad loaded up with something off of Peacock or Hulu or Max or Netflix or Prime, Amazon Prime, whatever. I've got access to all of those, and the ones I like the most. Like this time, I just flew out to LA in the last couple of days and back, and I watched 8 episodes of the Day of the Jackal, the new one that's out on Peacock.
Peacock, right?
Yeah.
Is it good?
It's very good.
Okay.
The acting is excellent. They make the story very believable. And I was going to watch 2 more episodes, and they expired before I'm on the plane coming back, and there's nothing you can do about it because you don't have Wi-Fi on the plane. The downloads had expired. So my next trip is next week. I'll be going to McAllen, Texas. So I'll finish up that while we're going. But it seems like it's a lot of bad guy stuff. But also I like things. I watch all the Churchill stuff that comes out. Winston Churchill. There's a lot of series are out about the Vikings. So I always, and they're all dramatic versions, but I like those a lot just to see where things started.
Sam's a big fan of Vikings.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's in my blood.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that where the red hair comes from?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Now that you mention it with the beard and the long hair, you could go for a Viking.
He looks like Kratos from God of War.
Well, it's better than looking like Fredo. From Goodfellas. Right?
Oh, that's awesome.
Because I know a retired DEA agent looks just like that.
That's
what we call him. Fredo. So, that's about it. Try to watch the news at least once a day to see what's going on. But honestly, I never realized how involved, how time consuming a podcast is. I mean, it's so much so that Connie now does all my editing for me.
That's cool.
Believe it or not. Oh, yeah, she's great. She's great. She picked it right up. She's better at it than I ever was.
Is Connie coming to San Diego or no?
No, she don't. She won't go to cop conferences. She's like, all you do is you guys get together, you just talk cop crap all the time. I'm like, well, when you go meet nurses, that's all y'all talk about is nurse stuff.
And I kind of wanted to ask her if, what happened to Puff, if her cat really got hung, what it was like to work in a hospital with a commie, if she really left you at the airport and took your daughter and left you in Colombia, all these, true stories that Narcos told us.
I got to address some of those just for her.
Okay.
Was that one where she took the baby and went back to Miami?
Yeah.
So as they're writing the episodes, Netflix or Eric Newman and the writers, they would email us the new scripts and we'd go through and read it and try to pick out, little inaccuracies or something to make it a little more authentic. And so that one came along and because Connie's portrayed in the show, she authorized them to use her real name. She gets to read them too. And so I'm reading the one that comes in and I read that about she takes the baby and leaves. And I'm like, oh geez, this is not going to be good. She never left. So she's yelling, hey, did the new script come in? I'm like, yeah, I'm reading now. I'll get to you in a minute. Let me finish. And then, eventually she comes in after about an hour or two. She's like, where's the new script? And so I give it to her and I go back to doing whatever I'm doing. And it wasn't 10 minutes. She's in there. Did you read this shit? That didn't really happen. I've never left you. You know that. And I'm like, baby, I didn't write it. I didn't write it. So she's like, well, this isn't right. And I said, I agree with you 100%. You're always right. So a couple of days goes by and Eric Newman calls and in our old house in Virginia, you could walk through the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, the foyer, and you can make a circle. Usually when I'm on the phone, I'm walking just out of habit. And so I'm talking to him and she says, who are you talking to? Like, it's nobody. Well, when you say that to your wife, the radar goes up,
Yeah.
Are you talking to another woman? And she listens for a minute. She's like, that's Eric, isn't it? Give me the phone. So she rips him a new one on the phone. And I can just imagine he's going, Connie, I know you didn't leave him. This is just Hollywood, it's just a dramatic version of what goes on. So then fast forward to the release of season 2, and they fly us all out to Hollywood for the premiere, and they wined us and dined us and chauffeurs and just really took nice care of us. And the night before the premiere, Eric and his wife met us at some fancy restaurant in Hollywood, and so we come walking in, and Eric's on the other side of the room. Eric's a big man. I'm 6'2", and Eric's at least as big as I am, if not bigger. And he sees Connie come walking in, and he stands up and across the restaurant. He's going, Connie, are we okay now? Are you going to kick my ass? Have we got a problem here? It was hilarious to see this big man. We're worried about getting his butt kicked by my wife. So I just want to set that straight. And Puff, we did have a cat named Puff. We had a hard time getting Puff in country, and Puff did die in Colombia. But he wasn't sacrificed by the Sicarios. He had a heart attack. He died of natural causes.
That's too bad. Yeah, I just wondered, you knew that stuff was false, but it's always funny to bring it up. But it has to feel good too, because me and Sam were talking about this the other day, because me and Sam went and reviewed a movie, Captain America: Brave New World, and and the press tour for that movie, the
Skip
guys,
it, Steve. Skip
yeah,
it.
yeah, don't watch it.
Oh,
It's no
really?
good. It's no good. But like the press tour for that, like the actors were like, I just really got into the role. It was really good. Like, they were lying essentially. You could tell because it was just a whole lot of nothing. And it's got to feel good. Like you give the story of your life to these people. They're going to take some liberties, but you sit down and you watch it. I'm assuming that like once you saw the finished product, that you were just like, damn, this is fucking awesome. Like I can't believe that it was portrayed in this. Like that's got to feel so good. That, like they took that story and created something quality out of it that you could just feel like, man, that's just got to be a cool feeling.
Well, we were, excuse me, we were out there in Hollywood working on season 2 with the writers, and Eric has a viewing room in his office. And, you got the big plush chairs and got the bar and the popcorn in the back and the big screen. And he said, "Hey guys," he said, "we've got episode 1 from season 1. You guys want to see it?" We're like, "Sure." So we go in and I get a soda, Javier gets cold beer, and we get some popcorn. And we're all nestled down in those big overstuffed chairs. He said, "Well, just be prepared because we haven't worked on the colorization. We haven't added any music. This is just raw footage." So we started watching it. In about 15 minutes, we got up, told Eric, "Hey, we're going back to the hotel. We'll see you later." It sucked. And, we learned like, this is going to be the biggest flop in Hollywood. Well, then, and Eric asked, he said, "Is everything okay?" We're like, "Yeah, it's okay. We're just tired. We want to go back to the hotel for a while." And then when episode 1 came out on Netflix, oh, it wasn't anything like we saw in that raw footage. It was, I mean, they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
The last thing I heard was, and it's been quite some time. This might be over a year now. I'd read an article that said rated Narcos as the fourth highest rating original content show that Netflix had ever produced. There for a long time is number 1.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I do.
But it's for us, it really kicked off our speaking careers. And, like I said, we're in our 10th year now.
Well, and I'll say like, when I more or less binged the first 2 seasons, over the course of like a couple weeks. But when I look back, and obviously we've talked about some of these things, maybe the things that weren't necessarily true, or the moment of shooting that guy's tire out, right? Like, I didn't. After seeing that, like when I think about your character, I didn't think about those moments.
Yeah.
I had come about, and I think overall, here is my view of Steve Murphy. Here is my view of JP and this world, and I just have nothing but respect and go, these are good men that went into terrible situations and came out mostly unscathed physically. I'm sure there's a whole lot more on the other side of that, but that have done good, are doing good. And this, at least in my opinion, I felt like it represented them well. And I have to agree. Even though I felt empathy towards Pablo, I did not think it glorified him at all.
I agree.
So I agree with that as well.
Yeah. A couple things. Javier has never watched. He's never even finished watching season 1. He started having flashbacks.
Oh man.
And Colleen and I've watched it once. We tried watching it a second time, just because, when the writer's going to strike and all that, shows just got redundant. And we'd get through maybe the first 2 episodes, and that's like, yeah, that's enough. But one thing I want to point out, because of everything they show in Narcos, the first thing that they show Javier and I doing whenever they're coming into the scene is they light a cigarette. Neither one of us smoked.
Huh.
And they got bottles of liquor in their desk drawers. You didn't do that.
You guys smoked a lot in that series.
Oh man, they must have gone through 1,000 cartons of cigarettes in that show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we don't even smoke. I mean, we smoked cigars, but that was about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I have one more question, if I may.
Sure.
And I don't know why this is, but it's kind of, to a degree, it's like I watch a show like this, and then I watch a show like Sicario, or 000, and I go, okay, I'm a little freaked out to go and visit Mexico or go and visit Colombia even today, right? And I know that even still, I know that there are people every single day going in and out, have a great time, are completely safe, totally fine. But there is like this reservation where I'm like, I'll fly to England and not even think twice. But you book a flight to Colombia, and I'm like, I don't know if I feel good about that, right?
Yeah.
But I know that it's total. I know that there's places in the UK that you don't want to go, and people you don't want to mess with, and situations that are probably the exact same, but it's just not portrayed in the media the same way that these other countries are.
Right.
So my question is, how safe is it still to just go as a regular civilian, not looking for any trouble? Obviously, you can find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time. But to go to a place like Colombia today, or Mexico, or whatever, just to go and see a beautiful country with beautiful people, uh, what's the safety like even today?
So Mexico, I will never go back to Mexico. My oldest son, he's well off financially, and he and his wife get together with friends, and they take vacations together throughout the year. And a few years ago, he called me and says, "Hey, Dad, this year we're all going to, I think it's Cancun or one of those places." And I'm like, "No, you're not." Now my kid's, he's in his 40s. He's like, "Hey, old man, I respect your opinion, but you can't tell me where I'm going." And so I explained to him the dangers that were in Mexico, and he said, "Well, then where do you think we should go?" And I said, "Go to Colombia." He's like, "Dad, I can't believe you would say that after everything you went through." And I said, "It's a
Yeah,
different time now." I said the country has changed significantly. There's places in Colombia, just like you said, there's places in every city, whether you're in the United States or in South America, that you don't go to because that's where trouble lives. But, just normal sightseeing, going and having a good time. So they went to Cartagena and they went out to the Rosario Islands and fell in love with the place. Then our oldest daughter, about a year and a half ago, her and her boyfriend and some other couples went down and they went to Cartagena and Medellin. Now, this is the daughter that's from Bogota originally. She still looks a little bit Colombian. It seems like her skin's lightened up over the years, but she doesn't speak any Spanish. She can count to 10 to say her colors is about it. And so they went to Medellin and just came back, talked about how they were sending us pictures about how beautiful it was, how nice the people were. Then in Cartagena, loved the history there and the beaches and the restaurants, and just really, really loved the place. Now, when Javier and I go back there, the only requirement we have when a company hires us is that they cannot announce to anybody that we're coming to Colombia. Is it danger? I don't know, but I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree, but I'm also not stupid either.
yeah.
So we don't let them announce, and we have not spoken to any Colombian audiences at the times we've been down there. We actually went to Medellin before COVID and to film a show that was called Finding Escobar's Millions. It only lasted one season, and we were supposed to be the face of the show, but we got in an argument with the attorneys at Discovery, and there's a big disagreement. So they hired a couple former CIA guys to come in and do the show, who did a great job. So we just flew down to do an intro, and we were there 2 or 3 nights is all. And the Medellin I saw is not at all what I remembered. I mean, it's beautiful. We're in Poblado, which is the nice section of town. I mean, Tyler, you know where the Hard Rock Cafe is. I actually watched the Super Bowl at Hard Rock Cafe Medellin while we were there.
Oh, that's cool.
What was funny is it was funny because I'm there with a lot of gringos, and they did have a security detail for us. It was a bunch of former British SAS guys that were like ninjas. I mean, those guys you never saw them, but if something got a little hairy, there they were. They were fantastic. But it was funny watching the Colombians cheer for American football because they didn't quite understand everything, and there would be a field goal, and they're like touchdown, and just funny things. It made it very interesting.
That's cool.
So it's I highly encourage everybody to go to visit Colombia. Just use good common sense. If you think something doesn't look right, don't go there. If let your inner feelings, your intuition guide you on that, because you can get yourself in trouble real easy. They've got in Medellin, they've got the cable car now. It takes you up in the comunas, and those comunas were pretty dangerous back in the day. And I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be in them at nighttime, because I'd say they're probably still pretty dangerous. So there you go. It's Colombia's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Can't say enough good things about it.
No, that's good. That's good. That's good stuff.
Dang. Well, Steve, man, we sure appreciate you being on the Locked Off Logic podcast. And yeah, just like your story is amazing. Like I'm like, thank you for living a good story and for sharing your story with us and like being so vulnerable with us on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And you know, Sam and I have this, you know, as we're ending, I know you have a conference call here in a bit. I imagine Connie needs a hug and that you probably need to have like a little bathroom break before your next call. But, you know, Sam and I have this thing, basically Sam, where we end the podcast in a very specific way every week. And so Sam, I'll let you bring us home, my man.
Well, you know, again, big thanks, Steve, for joining us and just being along on our little fish in the big pond of podcasts, where we just really are doing this because we like it and we want to talk with people that inspire us and have great inspiring stories. You know, and we do it because we really care about good things and good people, and at the end of the day, like, you know, I don't want to say like necessarily more love into the world, right? But genuinely, like, we hope that if anyone is listening, whether it's just one person or not, that they have a bit of a safe space for a bit of time, and we just hope that people can feel safe or be inspired. So we're super grateful for you and your story. I have been thrilled about this. Like, it's just been very rewarding for me. And I also just want to throw out, like, if you ever need any help or anything else with what you're doing on your end from filmmaking side or whatever, I would love to help however I can help. Because I think it's really cool and just great stories I think need to be shared and told. And then, you know, we just leave with saying, like, be sure to tell someone that you love them, because, you know, we only have right now. Nothing else is guaranteed. And so we just appreciate the time. And for anybody else that's listening, just, you know, if it's not your wife waiting for you after a podcast, it's a neighbor or a friend, just be sure to tell someone that you love them.
I agree with you 100%. It's been an honor to be on here with you guys, both of you, Tyler, what you represent through Libertas and the friendship that we've garnered. And now, Sam, you're a new friend, and to find out that you're supporting Tyler and his efforts there, yeah, it makes us friends. You know, we're all thinking alike on this. The fact that you know, you're giving me time to tell my stupid little story. It's like, you know, we said that we lived this, and then Netflix took it and blew it completely out of proportion, and it's created a platform. But, you know, if it helps us to get the right word out there, I'll take advantage of it as long as I can, as long as the good Lord lets me. So, guys, thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here with you.
Likewise. And I'll say it again from the very beginning. This is a man you can trust.
Thank you.
That's a Locked Off Logic exclusive.
I like it.
So, well, great.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate it, Steve.
I'm sure we can end the podcast before that. But thanks again, Steve. Wow. Like, holy smokes.
Let me stop this thing.